Madam Presiding Officer, Deputy Chief Secretary, Secretaries, Assistant Secretaries, Minority Leader and other members of the House of Assembly, Administrators of the Tobago House of Assembly, Senior Staff of the Tobago House of Assembly, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in the public gallery, local and international audiences following this presentation on radio, television, and other live streams, members of the media, good morning. Madam Presiding Officer, it is a great pleasure for me to present the second budget of my administration before this honorable House. The budget statement is a statutory obligation under Section 41 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996. Madam Presiding Officer, the budget statement is undoubtedly the most important policy statement of the Tobago House of Assembly. It constitutes the strategic objectives, the projects and programs designed to achieve these objectives, and the estimated expenditure that is required to achieve the desired outcomes, and the estimated revenues of the Tobago House of Assembly for the ensuing fiscal year 2024. Madam Presiding Officer, it's worth mentioning again, as I did last year, that the current fiscal and budgetary legislative frameworks denies the THA the full transformative reach and powers that are inherent in a budget. More will be said about this later in the presentation. The budget is being presented against the backdrop of a global economy that is still struggling to recover from the debilitating socio-economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic and from the increasing socio-economic displacement caused by climate-induced natural disasters and supply chain disruptions blamed on the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war. Madam Presiding Officer, here at home, we continue to be confronted by a rising tide of crime and violence, a national economy that is seemingly sluggish, a central government that is demonstrably unsupportive of the fiscal and financial needs of Tobago, and constitutional and governance arrangements that are less than ideal. Madam Presiding Officer, politics, like cricket, is a game of glorious uncertainties. Despite the political developments that have occurred in the last year, I want to seize this opportunity to say to the national community, and more directly, the Tobago community, that this administration remains committed to delivering on its mandate received from the people in 2021. Madam Presiding Officer, we are pressing ahead towards building a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient Tobago. Notwithstanding the political noises coming from Minority Leader A and Minority Leader B and Minority Leader C from Trinidad, I am proud to lead this young and rapidly developing team on the journey towards making Tobago the greatest little island on the planet. Madam Presiding Officer, this budget statement could not have been completed without the valuable inputs and contributions of several individuals and groups. I want to thank in particular the secretaries and assistant secretaries for their contributions. I also want to thank all the individuals who came out and shared their perspectives in the Executive Council's town hall meetings. These town hall meetings have informed this budget, and to date, this is the largest and widest consultative process on the fiscal measures to be taken by the Tobago House of Assembly. In the past, we would only consult with small interest groups. This time around, we consulted with villages. To the persons who on a daily basis share their ideas and thoughts with us, the groups that have submitted contributions, I say thanks. to the public officials across the divisions of the THA who put together the various estimates and contributed to the planning of this fiscal package, I extend my gratitude to you, to my dear wife and beloved daughter and family who have supported and loved me during this extraordinarily hectic period. I extend my sincere appreciation. Most importantly, Madam Presiding Officer, I want to give thanks and praise to Almighty God for His continued grace and mercies upon Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, for the remainder of the presentation, I will proceed as follows. First, I will provide an outlook for the international, regional, and domestic economies. Second, I will deliver a review of the fiscal operations and achievements over the last year. Third, I will articulate the strategic policy objectives of fiscal 2023. And fourth, I will present the estimates of, that should be fiscal 2024. And fourth, I will present the estimates of expenditures and thereafter the financing options. Finally, I will conclude this presentation, and hopefully it will be in shorter time than last year. No promises there. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to inform the listeners that this is my calculated decision not to go for 4 hours as I did last year's presentation. I will now examine the outlook for global and regional economies and then the outlook for the national and Tobago economies. Global economic outlook. Madam Presiding Officer, the prospects for Tobago's development must be seen in the context of current and future trends in the global economy. Global economic growth in recent years has been sluggish as the world continues to struggle with the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Russian-Ukraine war continues to disrupt global trade with spin-off effects on global inflation. The International Monetary Fund forecasts global economic growth of 2.8% at the end of 2023, which will increase slightly to 3.0% in 2024. Relatedly, global inflation is projected at 7.0% for 2023 and 4.9% for 2024. While the advanced economies are projected to grow modestly at 1.3% and 1.4% in 2023 and 2024 respectively, emerging and developing economies are projected to grow by 3.9% and 4.2% in the same periods. With respect to the advanced economies, output in the United Kingdom and Germany is projected to decline by 0.1% and 0.3% respectively in 2023, but increase by 1.1% and 1.0% in 2024. Interestingly, the United Nations World Tourism Organization foresees global tourism returning to pre-pandemic levels by the end of 2023 and supports targeted investment in the sector. Compared with the first quarter of 2022, the first quarter of 2023 has seen a more than 100% increase in international tourist travel. New trends in tourism in 2023 include multi-generational ed ventures, a combination of awareness of children's education needs with holiday travel for the rest of the family, what is known as bleisure or the twinning with leisure travel, sustainable tourism, and luxury travel. Madam Presiding Officer, These are developments that we must continuously monitor because of their implications for Tobago's economic growth and development. Furthermore, among the emerging and developing countries, China and India are forecasted to grow at 5.2% and 5.9% in 2023 and 4.5% and 6.3% in 2024, respectively. According to the United States Energy Transformation Administration, or EIA, the West Texas Intermediate price of oil is forecasted to average US $77 per barrel by December 2023, but is expected to fall to US $72 per barrel by 2024. The Henry Hub price of natural gas is expected to average US $2.91 or 2.91 per MMBTU by the end of 2023 and increase to US $3.72 per MMBTU in 2024. The projected movements in the prices of oil and gas have material implications for our national economy and our own economy. Madam Presiding Officer, in our Latin America and the Caribbean region, we're looking at regional economic outlook now, growth is expected in our region at 1.3% by the end of 2023, increasing slightly to 2.4% in 2024. Within the Caribbean region alone, projected growth rates are 5.6% in 2023 and 5.7% in 2024. Tighter financial conditions have stifled investment in most of the islands, which has made debt difficult to roll over and or manage. This has resulted in lower growth rates in the countries, except notably Guyana, which is enjoying a petroleum-driven economic boom. The reliance on tourism, remittances, and the export of commodities has made Caribbean economies extremely susceptible to negative economic shocks in advanced economies. Added to this susceptibility are increased risks arising from natural disasters. These risks, Madam Presiding Officer, have been exacerbated by the negative effects of climate change, such as sea level rise and rising sea surface temperatures. Madam Presiding Officer, the data suggests that there are significant development opportunities related to the diversification of Tobago's economy in digital competitiveness and connectivity and in the uptake of smart technologies. Development opportunities also exist in financing related to climate change. National Economic Outlook. Madam Presiding Officer, nationally, the outlook for the economy shows mixed fortunes with energy and non-energy sectors. The Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, in its latest economic bulletin in January 2023, reported an expansion of domestic economic activity in the third quarter of 2022. This was fueled by rapid economic growth in the non-energy sector, which increased by 10.5%, offsetting the 2.5% decline in the energy sector. Madam Presiding Officer, the non-energy sector growth was led by developments in professional, scientific, and technical activities, transportation and storage, and accommodation and food services. The decline in the energy sector was driven by contractions in the petrochemical and condensate extraction subsectors. However, in the third quarter, growth in the energy sector was driven by gas productions from the following projects: Calibri, Barracuda, BPTT's Matapal, and the Nova's Zandoli. This is contrasted with a decline of 9.2% in petrochemical production in the second quarter, due primarily to a drop in ammonia production, which outweighed a 1.2% increase in methanol production. Notably, Madam Presiding Officer, the country's gross official reserves at the end of December 2022 stood at US $6.8 billion, representing about 8.6 months of import cover. The Central Statistical Office recorded a 5% unemployment rate, note that figure, a 5% unemployment rate in the fourth quarter of 2022, which is similar to the rate recorded for the corresponding period 1 year before. In April 2023, the rates of headline and food price inflation nationally were 6% and 11.2% respectively, and core inflation was recorded at 4.8%. Notwithstanding rising global interest rates, the central bank in December 2022 kept the repo rate at 3.5%, guided by the pace of the domestic recovery and inflation rates. Generally, the domestic economy is still largely reliant on the fortunes of the energy sector. This sector, as we all know, is highly vulnerable to the vagaries of global market forces and speaks to the urgent need for diversification. Madam Presiding Officer, I now turn my attention to the Tobago economy. Madam Presiding Officer, the most recent data produced by the Economic Management Research Unit in the Division of Finance, Trade and Economy indicates that Tobago's gross domestic product at constant prices for 2022 was approximately 1.65 billion TT dollars. An examination of the composition of the island's GDP points overwhelmingly to the need to diversify the island's economy and develop new economic drivers. In fact, Madam Presiding Officer, the data indicate that the state sector was the largest contributor to Tobago's GDP in 2022, accounting for approximately 46% of the island's GDP. The second largest contributor was the finance, insurance, real estate, and business sector, accounting for about 27%. The tourism sector was the third largest sector, accounting for about 14% of GDP in 2022. The transportation, storage, and communication sector accounted for approximately 4% of the island's GDP, and construction and quarrying contributed about 3%. Finally, the data suggests that agriculture and manufacturing sectors were relatively small, collectively contributing about 2% to Tobago's GDP in 2022. Madam Presiding Officer, shifting my attention to labor market conditions in Tobago, the most recent labor market data available from the CSO for the fourth quarter of 2022 suggests that the rate of unemployment in Tobago was approximately 1%, a figure which is significantly below the national figure of 5%. However, the reported 1% unemployment rate for Tobago must be interpreted with caution and subjected to deeper labor market analysis. Underemployment is still a real deal for us in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, the share of the labor force employed in the government sector stood at 55%, with the private sector employing about 45%. Comparatively, the share of the national, that's Trinidad and Tobago's labor force in the government sector stood at 26%, with the private sector employing about 74%. That's nationally. In Tobago, 55% employed by the government sector and 45% by the private sector, with underemployment, not unemployment, underemployment still being a challenge. The share of the island's labor force with tertiary education as the highest level of attainment was 28%. The share with secondary education as the highest level of attainment, 60%. And the share with primary education as the highest level of attainment, 12%. Madam Presiding Officer, the most recent data on prices available from the central bank suggests that Tobago recorded headline and food inflation in April 2023 of 6.2% and 17% respectively. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy, was recorded at 4.4%. This situation, particularly with respect to food price inflation, is of significant concern to us, and which we propose to address frontally with our food sovereignty and food security initiatives. Given the trends in the national and international market, the forecast is for continued rising inflation in fiscal 2024. Madam Presiding Officer, there is a need for us to boost our defense against inflation and protect the population from the falling real standard of living it inevitably brings. As you know, given our current productive base, most of the food price inflation we experience in the island is imported from Trinidad and elsewhere. The foregoing analysis represents the economic context in which we do our budgetary estimates for fiscal 2024. So I now turn my attention to highlighting some of the key achievements of this administration over the last fiscal year. Madam Presiding Officer, truth and science must be the foundation of everything we do. Therefore, a fair and material assessment of what was achieved thus far in fiscal 2023 must be positioned against the level of funding that was actually allocated to the THA to provide public services to Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, you will recall that in fiscal 2023, I requested a total package of $3.97 billion, comprising $3.07 billion for recurrent expenditure, $900 million for development program expenditure, $59.59 million and $53.17 million for URP and CPEP respectively. The unfortunate truth is that the THA was only allocated $2.6 billion, comprising $2.2 billion for recurrent expenditure, $400 million for development program, and $18 million and $9.2 million for URP and CPEP respectively. This constituted an underfunding of the THA by $1.3 billion or 33.3% of the money is requested to meet the expenses of our planned program of works for fiscal 2023. It is important to also note that we inherited over 700 million in debts owed to contractors and other service providers, some threatening to march every Monday morning for their monies. Madam Presiding Officer, thankfully, most of them are not attempting to extort their monies from us. What is even more fiscally and financially abusive is the illegal conduct of the Minister of Finance in single-handedly reducing the amount of money approved by the National Parliament for the Assembly. Our reconciliation exercise revealed that between 2017 and 2022 alone, the Ministry of Finance did not release 152 million in approved allocations to the THA. Added to this, Madam Presiding Officer, the Minister of Finance increased the national budget by 3.80 billion in the 2023 mid-year review and allocated only 100 million to the THA, and that's 100 million after a demand to pay certain contractor, as opposed to 153 million in keeping with the 4.03% minimum of the Dispute Resolution Commission, once again breaking the law. This now makes it a total of 205 million owed to the Tobago House of Assembly by the central government. Madam Presiding Officer, this is a clear case in which the central government has been caught stealing from Tobagonians. In fact, if I should put on my old linguistic cap, the more appropriate expression will be the central government has been thieving from Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, this grossly abuse, insensitive and unfair situation was formally brought to the attention of the Minister of Finance, who replied that he had the authority in law to reduce Tobago's meager share of the national budget. What is even worse, the Minister of Finance went on in his letter to me to quote an act which he claimed was embedded in the Constitution. And when I checked that particular section of the Constitution, it dealt with the hosting of elections and the filling of the Senate. Nothing to do with an authority for the minister to reduce Tobago's meager share of the national budget. The matter was also raised with the Prime Minister, who disappointingly, as usual, but not surprisingly, supported his Minister of Finance. Let me make it pellucid that my administration will take all and every step to ensure that every penny, every red cent that was approved by the National Parliament for Tobagonians come to the Tobago House of Assembly to do our business. I say no more on this matter for now. Madam Presiding Officer, even after the meager allocation of $4.03 for every $100 spent in this country for Tobago, numerous obstacles placed purposefully in our way, we were still able to deliver for Tobagonians. Yes. Some key highlights of our achievements over the year are: in the social sector, we commissioned and commenced operations at Roxburgh Hospital, taking tertiary level care directly to Tobagonians in the east and northeast of the island. 307 cataract surgeries were successfully performed through the cataract backlog program, reducing the backlog by 63%. We, not they, we increased the social grant from $500 to $1,000 for families of 5 or more. We successfully completed upgrade and repair works to primary and secondary schools to the tune of $30 million under the annual school repair program, which represents the largest upgrade of its kind in the history of Tobago. We provided financial support to 450 families to purchase school supplies. We provided financial assistance to 71 new tertiary level students and continued assistance to 51 students under the financial assistance program to the tune of $2.6 million, well above the $700,000 allocation we received from the central government. I need you to listen to this, Madam Presiding Officer, because I know you worked for the THA, so you might jump up in this. We paid backlog gratuity and increments to teachers and other employees of over $25 million. Madam Presiding Officer, I want teachers to note that the allocation to pay gratuities and increments was only at $7 million. We outfitted our schools with furniture and furnishings at a value of $7.7 million. We exposed 250 young persons to the World of Work program through the Youth Department and the Youth Energized for Success program. We dispersed over $6 million to 648 beneficiaries under the Home Improvement Program. 648 beneficiaries, $6 million. Again, more was spent on this program than what was allocated for it. Yes. We launched the social housing construction program with the successful construction and delivery of one of the model houses to a client in Bonaccord. 20 more houses are to be completed, with the second one nearing completion by way of repairs. All are expected to be distributed before the end of 2023. We successfully trained 1,000 persons in the vocational skill program. We successfully reconstituted and operationalized over 21 village councils or community councils. Madam Presiding Officer, this is a critical step in the democratization of our governance. Village councils have to move away from being geriatric wards for party groups and become village councils for the governance of villages. Yes. Over 21 reconstituted and who will be engaged in the THA as part of community governance. That is democratization of governance on the island. Not one man tripping up and down in the media. We constructed the Montgomery walk-around track at a cost of $1.16 million. We have started the project of lighting up the Patience Hill playground. The scoping is completed for Louisdor, and Louisdor will start in short order. We upgraded by way of our financial contributions the swimming pool, YMCA, across from Turtle Beach, and the Kendall swimming pool works are ongoing. We restructured CPEP to improve operational efficiency and productivity. In our financial and economic operations, we commissioned a forensic audit which revealed that the claims made by contractors, listen closely, were on average 60%.
This matter is in front of the court. There's an injunction on this audit, and therefore it's sub judice.
Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I know what is before the court, Madam Presiding Officer, and just as I have been careful in picking quite cautiously what to say to the public, I am so doing today. And it's also part of the reason why I am not giving the minority a copy of the report. Madam Presiding Officer, we commissioned a forensic audit which revealed that the claims made by contractors were on average 60% overvalued. The audit also identified contractors who were paid tens of millions for projects on which they did no work. It also points to an organized criminal conspiracy to steal Tobago's money, which conspiracy seems to have involved members of the previous Executive Council.
Yes. The very audit, the nature of the audit is a consideration of the court, and therefore the contents that is being referred to cannot be lawfully put into this parliament, this house.
Minority Leader.
It is
Minority.
There's an injunction. There's an injunction.
Members, I will remind you all that this is a budget presentation. Nothing here is up for debate. Chief Secretary, I will caution you. Please be guided by the standing orders of this House. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, everything I stated about the audit is very general in nature. I still have not disclosed any of the named contractors involved in this matter. Further to which, Madam Presiding Officer, we must at this juncture note that not so long ago, there were calls to make the report public. And so it is quite bemusing, the hypocrisy from the other side.
Again, Chief Secretary, I will caution you to be guided by the standing orders of this House. If this matter is indeed before the court, this would be a sub judice matter. Please be guided accordingly. This matter is not for debate. Again, this is a budget presentation. Chief Secretary, continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, the audit report is expected to form parts of affidavits in the court in the soonest possible time. None of the culprits will escape. Amen. We exposed over 1,000 Tobagonians to financial literacy training. We provided COVID-19 relief to hoteliers and guest house owners to assist with repairs to and upgrade of their facilities. We paid the reserve electricity capacity bill for 5 hotels in the amount of $3 million to keep them open. We increased salaries and wages for CPEP and URP workers by 100% and 88% respectively. We provided 1,300 temporary jobs in total, 500 late last year, and 800 currently on a rotating basis to the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. Madam Presiding Officer, we employed 377 persons in the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, and 130 persons in the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development. Additionally, we increased the wages of reforestation workers. We successfully delivered the Low Great River Experience Facility, completed the renovation and upgrade of Manta Lodge, successfully hosted the inaugural Tobago Carnival in October 2022, launched the tourism industry customer service program and trained over 200 service leaders, successfully negotiated the resumption of the Condor flights from Germany to Tobago, successfully launched our diaspora engagement initiative in New York, improved operational efficiency at Tractor Pool with the acquisition of 6-wheeled tractors, an excavator, a trailer truck, a bucket truck, and a dump truck, distributed smart garden units to 57 schools, upgraded the water quality lab through the acquisition of additional equipment to test for lead, sulfide, phosphorus, and iron, and to do advanced testing for nitrates. In the area of physical infrastructure development, Madam Presiding Officer, we delivered the following: the Smithfield to Dutchford connector roads, the St. Peter's Bay Road, giving residents vehicular access to their homes, the connector road from Lamy to Roxborough, the Little Tobago Jetty Main House and Pagoda Rehabilitation Projects, refurbishment and upgrade of the prison in Tobago, which, by the way, Madam Presiding Officer, is not a function of the THA, so they might as well give me the work for national security. A bridge at Google Patch and other civil works, giving residents vehicular access to their homes. A restored and reconfigured physical assembly legislative chamber to now accommodate 15 members instead of 12 elected members. Madam Presiding Officer, the foregoing is only a snapshot of this administration's social and economic delivery to Tobagonians. There are many more achievements to talk about, but based on time constraints, I will end here. The other secretaries and assistant secretaries will provide greater details in the debate which will follow. Additionally, a paper containing my original statement with all the achievements will be laid in the House and will also be published for public consumption. I will now set out in detail my administration's strategic policy agenda for fiscal 2024 and beyond. Madam Presiding Officer, our longer-term strategic outlook for Tobago is one that speaks to a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient society. Therefore, our budget for fiscal 2024 is aptly themed: building a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient Tobago. And please permit me to elaborate on the core elements of the theme. Madam Presiding Officer, sustainability and resilience in the context of Tobago's growth and development speak to the strengthening of our governance institutions. More precisely, they demand the strengthening and the digitalization of the business processes, procedures, systems, and human resource capabilities of institutions and agencies of the Assembly. Strengthening and modernizing the island's institutions will enable us to maintain and deliver enhanced prosperity and resilience continuously over time through improved effectiveness and efficiency in project and program delivery. Madam Presiding Officer, this concept of sustainability has three kinds of interrelated components. economic, environmental, and social. Collectively, they focus on the balance between social and economic prosperity and the value of the ecological systems that serve to foster economic growth and social development. Sustainability includes serious considerations of the impacts of environmental, social, and economic drivers on changes to the well-being and welfare of Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, it is only on such a system of sustainability and resilience that prosperity will be delivered. In this regard, building prosperity speaks to creating practical socio-economic opportunities for every child, family, and community to be successful in the pursuit of self-actualization, wealth accumulation, good health, and general happiness. These are more valuable measures than the traditional tools of per capita income and GDP used to indicate development. Madam Presiding Officer, it is widely held that prosperity will emanate from the markets that develop from the pursuits of individuals and the evolving need for goods and services that they can't produce themselves. In promoting prosperity through effective, accountable, and inclusive governing institutions at all levels, we expect Tobagonians to have deep and loving relationships and a life worth living. We also expect Tobagonians to become more empowered and motivated towards making Tobago the greatest little island on the planet. Resilience. Madam Presiding Officer, the lessons learned from the catastrophic impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on lives and livelihoods, and from the widespread damage and socioeconomic displacement in our region caused by increased frequency and intensity of natural disasters that themselves are powered by climate change, have deepened the necessity to mainstream resilience as a critically important social development policy goal. Accordingly, we conceptualize resilience as a system property that should be mainstreamed in institutions of Tobago's government. In this regard, resilience represents the mechanisms that are designed and socially engineered into our governance arrangements that would allow our divisions and departments to seamlessly reorganize and continue to function in the face of events such as health pandemics, socioeconomic disruptions, and natural disasters. Therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, building resilience into our governing institutions is about developing and enhancing systems, processes, procedures, technology, and human resource capacity, and also capability to deliver results over time, credibly, legitimately, and quickly during precipitous and fast-moving, life-changing events. Strengthening our governance and constitutional framework. Madam Presiding Officer, we live in a digitally fluid world where there are many dangers and accelerating changes. The list of problems facing our island in this post-COVID-19 world is long, and it includes the lingering tailwind effects of the pandemic, food shortages, climate changes, and increasing inequality. We have only one tool for collective action to meet these challenges. Madam Presiding Officer, that's our Tobago government, THA, and its constituent governing institutions. Our nation, Trinidad and Tobago, is a constitutional republic by virtue of our 1976 Republican Constitution. What this means, Madam Presiding Officer, is that our government must operate and function in accordance with the laws and regulations of the Republic. It follows, Madam Presiding Officer, that the Constitution and THA Act 40 of 1996 represents the foundation on which the powers, authority, and responsibilities of the Tobago government stand. They constitute the bedrock on which sustainability, prosperity, and resilience are built and delivered to all of us as Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, this takes me to the critical issue of internal self-government. That is the strengthening of the constitutional and legislative frameworks that would establish the Tobago Island government. The current arrangements, notwithstanding the incremental improvements, are in large measure still akin to what can be justifiably labeled as constitutional colonization. Because the existing agreements give the Port of Spain-based central government the constitutional power and authority to intervene in, override, and decide on virtually every exercise of the authority the THA has been given by Schedule 5, the central government behaves in this way without invitation by either good cause or reason, even in the face of Tobagonians having elected their own island government. In fact, the central government behaves in this way out of disrespect for the people of Tobago and out of sheer bad mind for being voted out of power. As a result, Madam Presiding Officer, we have been experiencing and engaging in publicly displayed disagreement between the THA and the central government over time, and more so now. It didn't start in 2021, but it is continuing in 2023. They have certainly placed administrative impediments in our way. They have even taken us to courts on some matters. There is no need for any further evidence and/or arguments to prove that these disruptive actions are manifestations of the colonial provisions of the colonial masters sitting at the Red House in Trinidad. Therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, for us Tobagonians to build a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient economy, child by child, family by family, and village by village, we must together ensure that the necessary enrichments are made to the constitutional and legislative foundations of our collective agency, the Tobago House of Assembly. And it cannot be the wrong side, inside-out arrangements that were proposed by the current government in Port of Spain. Correct. In this regard, Madam Presiding Officer, in the coming months and continuing in fiscal 2024, this administration, in concert with Tobagonians, will be relentless in our pursuit of the following basic enrichment amendments to be made to the constitutional and legislative foundational governance relationship between the central government and the Tobago House of Assembly. 1. A constitutional definition of Tobago that is shaped by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and that references the social, cultural, economic, and political histories of the people of Trinidad, the peoples, plural, of Trinidad and Tobago. Yes. And we now take no legislative upgrade without this constitutional definition of Tobago being in it. Secondly, the conferral of final constitutional authority and powers on the THA for all the matters or items listed in the 5th schedule.
Yes.
But perhaps more clearly, Madam Presiding Officer, the Constitution must be amended to clearly state that the matters which the THA has final authority and control over in Tobago. And likewise, the Constitution must be amended to state the matters for which the central government will have special authority and control in and over Tobago. Thirdly, there must be appropriate amendments to Section 53 of the Constitution to create the Tobago legislature with constitutional authority and powers to make laws and adjacent regulations for the matters for which the THA has final constitutional responsibility and control. There must be appropriate amendments to Section 75 of the Constitution to place a fetter on the Cabinet in relation to the matters for which the Executive Council of the Assembly will have the final constitutional authority. And finally, Madam Presiding Officer, Section 113 of the Constitution must be amended to provide the constitutional guarantee of a minimum of 7% of the national budget or an appropriate rubric or formula for calculating Tobago's budgetary allocations. It cannot be that a Minister of Finance will decide how much to give and to take back what was appropriated in the budget. Madam Presiding Officer, these basic constitutional improvements will strengthen the governance foundation of the Tobago Island government. Moreover, they are proposed to provide clarity, predictability, peace, justice, fairness, and accountability, and to protect and promote the human rights and entitlement of Tobagonians to determine their destiny. This is the constitutional foundation on which Tobago will strengthen and build strong governing institutions to deliver sustainability, prosperity, and resilience to Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, after more than 50 years of struggles, the self-government project is no longer a guessing game for us. It is a project for which Tobagonians are now prepared with fuller knowledge and understanding of the minimum constitutional amendments that must be made for democracy to work for us in the Twin Island Constitutional Republic. Any refusal of one or more of these provisions will give Tobago cause to refuse the central government's overtures. Madam Presiding Officer, we are going to lead the integration of all new ideas and previous works into a Tobago position paper. This paper will inform the critical minimum amendments to be made to the proposed constitutional amendment bill currently at the committee stage of the Parliament. An expenditure of $6 million is programmed to fund this project in fiscal 2024. Madam Presiding Officer, I now look to our strategies for strengthening and digitizing the public administrative business processes and procedures of the Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, strong public institutions are essential for sustainable socio-economic development, prosperity, and also for resilience. Strong institutions play a lead role in reducing poverty, improving the rule of law, increasing economic growth, and managing environmental change. It is against the backdrop of the foregoing that Goal 16 of the Sustainable Development Goals is peace, justice, and strong institutions. The stated aim of the Sustainable Development Goals, or goal number 16, is to improve people's lives by reducing violence, improving access to justice, and promoting effective, accountable, strong, and inclusive institutions. Madam Presiding Officer, without a doubt, this administration is settled and nestled in the knowledge that strong institutions are a prerequisite for Tobago to move into a position of sustainability and resilience. Strong institutions will give birth to our future prosperity, child by child, family by family, and village by village. Yes. Madam Presiding Officer, the warning signals across our institutional landscape are blinking red. As policymakers, we have a make or break opening and an obligation to invest the resources on the strengthening of the island's governing institutions and thereby build the foundation of a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient Tobago. In fiscal 2024, we propose to accelerate the strengthening and the digitization of the public administrative business processes and procedures into an e-government platform called Tobago Online, of which My THA is the first phrase. The strategic goal is to bring all of the Assembly's public service delivery functions into a high security, high speed, single digital space that will allow remote online access to Tobagonians wherever in the world they may be. The substantive progressive outcome, Madam Presiding Officer, is that Tobagonians will stay in the comfort of their homes, log into My THA, and apply for and receive the decisions on their applications with respect to issues such as social assistance, pensions, home improvement grants, housing applications, financial assistance loans for tertiary education, business development loans, business development grants, and application for state lands, among others. It must be noted, Madam Presiding Officer, this is more than just putting an application form online. This is also about having the processing of these applications virtually. Madam Presiding Officer, the sustainability of the My THA e-government platform will be dependent on three critical factors. Firstly, the reliability and resilience of the hardware and the software components of the My THA digital infrastructure, the capacity and capability of public officers to discharge their duties and responsibilities effectively and efficiently in the digitized environment, and thirdly, public sensitization, accessibility, and capacity development. Madam Presiding Officer, in this regard, we have been having extensive discussions with the Minister of Digital Transformation and have secured his commitment to provide technical and financial support for this initiative. Relatedly, 14 sites have already been identified across the island for the establishment of technology centers, which will provide support to members of the public in their interface with My THA. Moreover, Madam Presiding Officer, the Ministry and the Division has also undertaken to work with the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and the service providers towards ensuring that every child, family, and community has reliable connectivity and free Wi-Fi access in all government offices and popular public spaces. Currently, with the THA's partnership with the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and the Flow, we are almost through with running fiber optics all the way to Lansome. So the once forgotten, behind God's back villages in North and Northeast Tobago will finally be right in front of God's face. Madam Presiding Officer, alongside the My THA initiative, we propose to develop and operationalize our diaspora registration and mobilization online platform in fiscal 2024. The online platform will provide a comprehensive and structured database of Tobagonians abroad that includes their skill levels and area of development of Tobago that they are interested in. This project will enable Tobagonians residing abroad to actively participate in and contribute towards the social, cultural, political, and economic advancement of their island. Madam Presiding Officer, as we computerize the public service processes and procedures of the Assembly, we must simultaneously equip our public officers with new skills and knowledge products necessary for them to operate efficiently and effectively. This will require our public officers to have 21st century skills that go beyond reading, mathematics, and science. Therefore, our workforce development, education, and training initiatives will seek to build the capacity in the following areas. 1, thinking critically and making studied judgments, which will empower them to assess the credibility, accuracy, and value of information, analyze and evaluate information, and make reasoned decisions. 2, solving complex and multidisciplinary problems by identifying problems, thinking through solutions, and exploring new options if required. Thirdly, creative and entrepreneurial thinking, the ability to think unconventionally, question processes, and imagine and come up with new and more creative ways to get the work done. Fourthly, communicating and collaborating by interacting competently and respectfully with others because of the cross-institutional functionalities that come with an integrated and digitized public administration. And finally, making innovative use of knowledge, information, and opportunities to create new services and processes and find better ways of doing the public's business. Madam Presiding Officer, in fiscal 2024, we propose to fully operationalize the Tobago Public Service Academy using the already accredited Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute as the executing entity. The academy was planned for the top floor of Shore Park Cultural Complex, and due to a long-standing leaking roof, the program has been on pause. And given that the roof is finally being fixed, the academy will soon be on its way. The academy will be our main workforce development, reskilling, retraining, and retooling institution. We view training as both an internal control and quality assurance mechanism. Madam Presiding Officer, the disparity between wages and salaries, allowances, and the performance of significant number of workers in the THA could severely stymie the efforts to build sustainability, prosperity, and resilience. This is an issue we must collectively address. In this regard, my administration will intensify efforts to strengthen the performance management and monitoring systems with the introduction of electronic attendance recording technologies across the entire Assembly. Adjacently, where performance deficits are identified, the necessary training and support will be provided, and where corrective action is required, it will be taken in keeping with the industrial relations laws and regulations. Our goal is to create a culture of work for reward and not reward for work. Relatedly, Tobago has to deal decisively.
Members, I only recognize the Chief Secretary at this time. Continue.
Relatedly, Tobago has to deal decisively with the institutional anomalousness that fuels the exodus of our senior public servants to Trinidad. Currently, Madam Presiding Officer, our administrators are paid significantly less than a deputy permanent secretary. This situation has led a number of administrators to leave the TH and go to Trinidad to act as DPS. A formal comparative study of the duties and responsibilities of a DPS and an administrator revealed that the administrator's workload is about 100% more than that of any DPS in any ministry in Port of Spain. In fact, every administrator by law is an accounting officer, and DPSs are not accounting officers by law. With that said, Madam Presiding Officer, to address this brain drain in fiscal 2024, my administration will continue to engage the Salary Review Commission and the Chief Personnel Officer with the direct aim of getting them to bring the matter to the attention of the Cabinet for redress. This would build stability and predictability in the administrative functions of the Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, if nothing else, the delays in the appointment of a Chief Administrator to the Assembly have made pellucid the urgent need to change the process by eliminating the involvement of the Prime Minister as proposed in the bill currently before the Prime Minister, or before the Parliament, sorry. So there's an urgent need in the process for the selection of a Chief Administrator by eliminating the direct involvement of the Prime Minister as proposed in the bill currently before Parliament. Additionally, the time has come for us to give serious consideration for the establishment of the position of Deputy Chief Administrator of the Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, modern inclusive governance demands that ideas and ideals of the people are embodied in the solutions to public problems. This is why we continue to engage Tobagonians in our town hall meetings from Shallerville to Crown Point. These meetings will continue even after this budget presentation, but listening to the people is not enough. We must build the formal institutional structures that will enable us to translate the wishes and aspirations of Tobagonians seamlessly from talk into action. That is why we took the action of issuing mandate letters to every secretary early in our first year. This is our way of ensuring that the people's mandate remains at the forefront of work to be done. We have achieved quite a bit thus far. At the same time, we recognize that there is still a lot of work to be done. We also recognize that a significant challenge for us is the limitations of the institutional environment for public engagement. Consequently, we intend in fiscal 2024 to finalize a policy position on public engagement, which will lead to the establishment of a public engagement framework based on the fundamental principle of public participation and related principles, including inclusion, transparency, deliberation, and collaboration. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me now to look at how this administration intends to strengthen the THA's fiscal and financial management systems. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly continues to express a keen interest in this long-standing issue of the modernization and digitization of the public financial management landscape. We are taking all necessary steps and making the required investments towards the successful implementation of the Integrated Financial Management Information Systems project. This project is geared towards the enhancement of public sector efficiency in the delivery of public services, transparency, and accountability in the management of public funds. This administration is quite mindful that the formal adoption of IFMIS in the THA requires substantive partnership with the central government, and as it is a national project championed by the Ministry of Finance. I'm well aware also that implementation requires high-level commitment, training, implementation of new processes, amendment of the legal and regulatory framework, and serious change management. Notwithstanding the requirements, I wish to place on public record my dissatisfaction with the pace of implementation and the level of setbacks experienced in preparation for several go-live dates set by the Ministry of Finance to operationalize the system. Since last year, the Assembly has been demonstrating a keen interest in advancing its efforts vis-à-vis the formal adoption of the new public financial management system and outline the key deliverables that have been achieved, indicating our readiness for this thing to go live. The selection and assignment of 2 officers within each of the 11 accounting units to act as change agents, done. The execution of end-user training, capacity building, change management sessions for all users across the Assembly, done. The provision and availability of adequate information hardware resources and secure connectivity access, done. A facilitated and supported hard data migration process, done. Reform of the THA cash management system to conform to IFMIS, done. The appointment of a THA representative on the National IFMIS Steering Committee, done. Accordingly, Madam Presiding Officer, there is no doubt that the PFM reform strategy through the IFMIS project will redound to significant benefits to Tobago, in particular, and the country as a whole. We are hopeful that later this year, the project will kick off successfully in the go-live phase as we continue to work with the Ministry of Finance throughout the implementation process. Notably, Madam Presiding Officer, we were able to secure the commitment of the IMF through the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center to provide additional technical assistance in the areas of fiscal and financial management, research, data collection, and debt management. Madam Presiding Officer, before I conclude this section, permit me to treat with some of the administration's proposed policy and institutional responses to the findings of the forensic report without stating in great detail the items under the forensic report. We propose
Minority Leader, I only recognize the Chief Secretary at this time.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And let me indicate for clarity to this House that the court matter is about the preliminary report and is not about the final report. But that is a clarity. But we propose to take legal and administrative actions against all persons that are culpable. We propose to renegotiate all claims that are overvalued to ensure that the THA gets value for money. We propose to ensure that all the THA procurement activities are in strict conformity with the new Procurement Act 1 of 2015. We propose to provide contract administration and management training to the staff of the THA and we propose to strengthen the project development and the management capabilities of the project implementation units across the Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, corruption is an insidious plague with an extremely high socio-economic cost, especially in small island developing states like ours. And as Chief Secretary, I'm ready and prepared to deal decisively with any act of corruption or even the appearance of corruption. I will now detail some of our plans to stimulate the economy. Madam Presiding Officer, we recognize that to stimulate the Tobago economy and build resilience, we must create an enabling environment for business on the island to prosper and to provide incentives and provide incentives to attract investments in key growth sectors. It is in this way that we will develop the high-paying private sector jobs and improve the standard of living and quality of life for our citizens. Many of our businesses on the island are still grappling with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, a 2022 study that I commissioned through the Economic Management and Research Unit in the Division of Financial and Economy looked at what happened during the COVID period, and we discovered that approximately 91% of businesses in Tobago suffered a reduction in their revenue, 40% experienced difficulties in meeting their payroll expenses, 37% experienced difficulties in honoring their obligations to financial institutions, 36% faced challenges in paying their rent, 63% experienced cash flow shortages, and 35% experienced disruptions in the supply of raw materials. Madam Presiding Officer, since coming into office and taking note of the report findings, I have been in constant communication with the various organizations representing businesses in Tobago about what is happening and how, as an assembly, we could improve the situation. What has become clear is the fact that the existing THA financial support systems for businesses in Tobago through the Business Development Unit and the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited are inadequate. A 4-member oversight technical committee was established with the mandate to devise a program to provide relief to the business community in Tobago to assist in their recovery for the debilitating effects of the pandemic. In keeping with its mandate, the committee has developed a loan guarantee program which is being reviewed. The loan guarantee program is designed for implementation through an enhanced and strengthened BDU with cross-fertilization from the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited and the commercial banking sector. Madam Presiding Officer, the policy which will provide the framework for the governance of the loan guarantee program, as well as the procedures for the management of arrears arising from any loan secured by a THA guarantee, have already been developed and is currently being reviewed by the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, over the long term, the committee will take all the necessary steps for the establishment and registration of a Tobago Development Bank. The Tobago Development Bank will be a critical vehicle for driving development in the island through the sourcing and provision of medium and long-term development financing coupled with cutting-edge technical assistance to both the Tobago House of Assembly and the businesses operating in Tobago. The THA is currently having discussions with persons with central banking and international banking experiences to provide technical support for the initiative. Madam Presiding Officer, a repurposed eco-industrial development company of Tobago, or EDCOT, remains one of our primary vehicles to deliver enhanced economic and business development opportunities. In fiscal 2024, EIDCOT will seek to deliver the following projects and programs designed to promote the business development in Tobago. Development of an e-incubator program, which will host the first of a series of workshops geared to assisting with mentorship, education, and access to professional resources for small and startup businesses, and most importantly, the necessary hand-holding that is missing from our current systems. EIDCOT will also offer current and prospective tenants ad hoc business development services to assist in the preparation of their application for tenancy at the Cove Park. Provision of land campaign initiatives, the second item for EIDCOT, and in order to stimulate interest in land tenancy at Cove, EIDCOT has launched a series of incentives which include a waiver of lease payments of up to 5 years, as well as complimentary access to EIDCOT project management services. This marketing effort will be taken throughout the country and the region. Establishment of an animation studio. The company will officially launch its animation studio, ePixel Studios, in July 2023. The venture, which is owned by EIDCOT and housed at Cove, is first of its kind on the island. ePixel Studios' cadre of young animators have been in the development stage of the company's signature production, Tobago Trek, for more than 2 years. With that experience and specialized training on board, ePixel Studios is now poised to undertake animation work for external clients around the world. Wow. So, Madam Presiding Officer, for more than 2 years, the young people have been working and training, but we are building the studio for them to market their services to the rest of the world. Yes. Development of additional build spaces. Due to the demand for build space by Tobago-based entrepreneurs, EIDCOT is actively seeking to construct additional buildings at Cove. These spaces will be specifically earmarked and designed accordingly for agro-processing and the light manufacturing, which have been the major areas of interest of businesses. Madam Presiding Officer, Stolly Park Enterprise Limited. SPEL continues to present our greatest potential for enhanced revenue generation. In this regard, I have mandated SPEL to aggressively seek export opportunities for its products in markets such as Guyana and elsewhere in the region. The projected export earning of the company is in the region of $100 million in 3 years, which will be a significant boost to the Assembly's revenues and the country's foreign exchange earnings. Therefore, it is our hope that the current challenges relating to the company's application for an export license and the licenses to operate are resolved in short order. SPEL has also been directed to explore the options for developing value-added products such as sandpaper, stone tiles, and brake pads using the public-private partnership modality. Critically to the company's delivering on its mandate is a need for it to strengthen its management, modernize its operational systems, and build resilience in the physical plant. This will require a significant capital investment, which we are committed to undertake. And as such, we have budgeted $60 million in fiscal 2024 for the acquisition of a new crushing plant. More than that, Madam Presiding Officer, SPEL has been mandated to explore ways in which it can offer its products at a cheaper cost to anyone doing business in Tobago as compared to outside or external clients. This is important as an incentive to drive the construction sector in Tobago and to ensure that average Tobagonians participate and enjoy the benefits, the royalties of their resource. Madam Presiding Officer, as it relates to investment, my administration is actively looking at different models and strategies to attract foreign direct investment into Tobago. In this regard, we have recently commissioned the development of an investment prospectus which will provide information and data on all investment opportunities in the island, as well as the statutory requirements, incentives, and the THA support. Additionally, we are also pursuing the development of a diaspora investment fund as a means of moving foreign investment capital into Tobago. Further, we put out a request for proposals for Phase 1 of the Tobago Infrastructure Development Program. This initiative has attracted the attention of a number of potential investors who have submitted and are still submitting proposals. In this regard, we intend to have discussions with the central government towards making the legislative arrangements governing FDI more investor-friendly, thereby improving the ease of doing business in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now speak to agriculture and food security. Madam Presiding Officer, the availability of healthy, safe, and affordable food is the #1 priority of this administration. Therefore, a critical element of our developmental strategy as it relates to agriculture and food sovereignty is the building of safe, sustainable, and resilient supply systems through the deployment and elevated uptake of science, research, smart agriculture technologies, and institutional strengthening. Our food sovereignty strategy is anchored on the development of modern, sustainable, and resilient agricultural practices, development of modern, sustainable, and resilient agricultural systems and practices. Madam Presiding Officer, by food sovereignty, we mean the base level nutritional support to sustain a population, especially during a disruptive event like the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, as I mentioned earlier, our food sovereignty strategies are intended to deal with the rising food price inflation. It is estimated that about 80% of the fresh agricultural produce sold and consumed in Tobago comes from Trinidad, and the island's agricultural sector contributes less than 1% of our GDP. Our agricultural policy must address these issues frontally. Therefore, in fiscal 2024, the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development proposes a number of initiatives aimed at boosting our agricultural production and food sovereignty agenda. One critical initiative is the development of 2 mega farms. These farms will allow us to derive available benefits from economies of scale, thereby placing us in a position to make food available to Tobagonians at a cheaper price. Last year, the farm was proposed, and during the fiscal year, the division did all of its feasibility studies. Our mega farm policy objective is to put a minimum of 200 acres into productive usage under a scientifically and technologically informed engineering design to promote cross-fertilization, effectiveness, and efficiency. Madam Presiding Officer, the mega farm is intended to be implemented using the public-private partnership modality, where the Assembly will provide the lands as its equity holdings in the project, and the infrastructure, production systems, smart technologies, and the knowledge capital will be jointly supplied. The proposed startup areas of productions are poultry, fresh produce, small ruminants, so goat and sheep, citrus, banana, and other indigenous fruits. I might have to whisper this one, pork. And aquaculture. And aquaculture. The mega farms will also serve as research and demonstration facilities to our wider agriculture and food security sectors, delivering knowledge and technological transfer opportunities. It is hoped that this project will serve as a fillip to the island's agriculture sector. As such, 51.8 million is budgeted for its implementation in fiscal 2024. Madam Presiding Officer, another major initiative pertains to the operationalization of the Tobago Agriculture Research Institute, or TARI, at the Kendall Farm School, which will become Tobago's Center of Agriculture Science, Research and Development. TARI's work and outputs will form the evidence that informs our transformative policy prescriptions for the sector. Relatedly, it will serve as the island's main workforce development and training institute, delivering 21st century skills and knowledge. In this regard, TARI will deliver our Tobago Youth in Agriculture Training Program. We propose to train and equip a minimum of 200 young people through TARI in fiscal 2024. The strategic objective is to create a continuously growing cadre of skilled young agri-entrepreneurs to drive the sustainable development of the sector and thereby infuse resilience into the labor supply. TARI will make greater use of virtual training and more community-centric face-to-face training as it seeks to make its offerings more accessible. It will also develop seed banks, thereby enabling us to preserve our indigenous varieties for future generations. Madam Presiding Officer, another critical initiative is the construction of 2 additional food hubs, one in Mason Hall going north and the other in Roxborough, aimed at giving greater opportunities to our farmers to market their produce in a dignified manner. The next initiative relates to the establishment of a flour factory to manufacture alternative flours such as sweet potato, breadfruit, plantain, and dasheen flour. It was with great disappointment, Madam Presiding Officer, that the building we inherited that we thought would have allowed us to move speedily into the production of alternative flours was far from being appropriate for this kind of manufacturing. This setback, nonetheless, has caused us to plan more efficiently, and this initiative will be spearheaded by the Tobago Agri-Business Development Company, which has secured a space at Cove where the factory will now be located. TATCO has also been conducting viability assessments to inform decision-making relating to the possible expansion of its fleet and to aggressively develop value-added products from its fish. Other initiatives of the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development to boost agricultural production over the next fiscal year include upgrade of the livestock facilities at the various demonstration stations, upgrade and restructuring of the tractor pool facility at Shaw Park to comply with occupational safety and health standards and to enable the provision of more timely services to farmers, clearing the more than decade-long backlog for services of tractor pool to farmers, transformation of existing fishing facilities to allow users to operate in conditions which comply with OSH requirement and meet the hazard analysis and critical control points or HACCP standards, completion and outfitting of the Palatavere fishing facility to provide adequate user space for fishers in the area, construction of the veterinary diagnostic laboratory to cater to the health needs of livestock on the island, establishment of 2 abattoirs to allow for the slaughtering and dressing of carcasses, and the expansion of the breadfruit initiative through the Tobago Reforestation and Watershed Rehabilitation Program. Madam Presiding Officer, permit me to look at our strategies for building of a sustainable and resilient tourism sector and cultural industries. Madam Presiding Officer, because of its largely untapped economic potential, tourism remains the island's most promising commercial sector. Therefore, the building of a sustainable and resilient tourism sector that will deliver prosperity to Tobagonians is of great urgency to this administration. Tobago, by its defining environmental, cultural, historical, and socio-economic properties, can possibly be labeled the Green Island of Festivals. This is supported by the following facts. Tobago has the oldest protected rainforests in the Western Hemisphere and perhaps the oldest known parliamentary legislation that is environmental in nature. Tobago has received the Man and the Biosphere designation. Tobago has one of the largest brink corals in the region. Tobago has the Buku Reef and the Nylon Pool. Tobago has a heritage festival, a goat and crab race festival, a blue food festival, a jazz festival, harvests, 2 carnivals, and a festival every Monday morning. As we seek to develop a prosperous and resilient society, we must intensify ongoing efforts to exploit the potential resident in our tour tourism and culture industries. It is therefore incumbent on us to address some perennial challenges facing the industry. These challenges pertain to inadequate airlift arrangements, insufficient marketing and adequate product development and room stock. As it relates to airlift, the Condor Airlines out of Germany resumes the service to Tobago in the winter season of this year. Building on this, the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited will continue ongoing negotiations to secure airlifts out of Western Europe and Scandinavia. We are particularly interested in the Scandinavian market because in the past it proved to be extremely lucrative to us. Proposed arrangements are being reviewed for direct airlift out of North America currently. The agency is also seeking a low-cost carrier as a replacement for Virgin Atlantic with the sum of building financial sustainability over the longer term. Relatedly, Madam Presiding Officer, In order to boost our marketing efforts, we will seek to have representation in the Scandinavian market. We propose to set up a Tobago desk in 2 Scandinavian countries, namely Norway and Sweden. Further, with the recent appointment of a destination representative for the US market and with established representation in the Canadian market, we will intensify our marketing efforts in the North American market. Moreover, we will seek to exploit all the tourism marketing opportunities that will emanate from our hosting or co-hosting of the 2023 Commonwealth Youth Games. As it relates to product development, we will continue efforts to improve customer service in the industry. In this regard, TITA will continue to collaborate with the Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute on a customer service program aimed at improving customer service throughout the tourism industry. And that program has already started. We also intend to establish through TITAL a Tourism Services Bureau of Standards, which will be mandated to inspect the condition of resorts and food and beverage establishment, customer service output, and report data and findings to the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation for further assessment and recommendations for remedial actions. Madam Presiding Officer, we are not waiting on the Bureau of Standards in Trinidad. It is time that we set our standards and force the sector to abide by them. Madam Presiding Officer, as we continue to enhance our product offerings over the next fiscal year, we will see the construction of a $300 million water park at Friendship Estate by Synergy Water, which will create hundreds of private sector jobs. Additionally, we propose to upgrade the Shallerville jetty facilities without harming the environment to accommodate safer docking for larger vessels and to also include further service offerings to our cruise ship passengers. Other significant upgrades are proposed for the product offerings at Pigeon Point Heritage Park, Store Bay Beach facilities, and the Bloody Bay Beach facility works will be completed. We also propose to develop a robust framework for the regulation of touts and reef tow operators and for the deployment of precepted reef rangers under our Department of Public Safety. Madam Presiding Officer, in order to improve the quality of our room stock, construction will begin on a 500-room, five-star resort at Kilgrin in October 2023, which will create 2,600 well-paying jobs and inject US $100 million in capital into the Tobago economy. At this stage, the company, Apple Leisure Group, has submitted the Environmental Impact Assessment Report and has been given a date for the determination of the Certificate of Environmental Clearance. This is a private hotel development. Allow me to go slowly. This is a private hotel development on privately owned lands. It is not THA or Tobagonians' land that were given for this development. Consultations and site visits were held with the following entities that actually registered and signed to say they were present. I'll list them. The Division of Food Security, the Division of Tourism, the Division of Health, the Division of Infrastructure, environmentalists and environmental groups on the island, residents of Kilgrin, Tyson Hall, Canaan, Bonaccord, and Crown Point, ATFA or the All Tobago Fisher Folk Association, TEMA, Land Management, Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, IMA or the Institute of Marine Affairs, geoscientists, the University of the West Indies Archaeological Committee, Tea and Tech, Tongue and Country, Committee for Sustainable Development of Canaan Bonaccord, and the Sustainable Pioneers, Bonaccord Sustainable Pioneers, and also the AMA. These parties were all present for consultation and tours. We also expect, as per agreement, that a 7-man committee with the THA appointing 5 of those members will be put in place to monitor the development so that they do what they propose to do. One of the requirements for this administration's support is the rehabilitation of the mangrove or the wetlands situated on the estate. Additionally, this administration proposed to the company that steps must be taken to treat with coastal erosion owing to the airport construction and expansion over the years. We also expect to see the start of construction of the Marriott Hotel at Rockley Bay. And for that, Madam Presiding Officer, this administration did the responsible thing. We brought the principals to Tobago. We brought the stakeholders on site. We walked the land. And we said to the stakeholders, make all of your complaints and your issues known now. And we made it clear to the developers, if those issues aren't addressed, the THA will not be supporting the development. Yeah. That is the responsible way of managing hotel development on the island. Having the people involved every step of the way. Yes. And not just coming from Trinidad and saying, I'm building a hotel there, and you have to take it. In addition, operations at Mantelot Space are expected to commence in the coming months. Further negotiations for a buyer and or developer for Sanctuary Villas are in train. Madam Presiding Officer, closely linked to a strategy to develop the tourism industry is our thrust to develop our cultural industries. We view the orange sub-economy as a driver of the economy with significant untapped potential. Leading this administration's drive to monetize our potential in the orange economy is a recalibrated and a much more focused and sensible Tobago Performing Arts Company, or TPAC, yes, and the Tobago Festivals Commission. In this regard, over the next year, TPAC will host a series of workshops, mentorship programs, and master classes aimed at providing a holistic learning environment that promotes artistic growth and professional development for Tobagonians in the performing arts. Host a major arts festival aimed at showcasing the rich tapestry of talents across all our creative departments in areas such as dance, drama, music, and film. Host a film production named Real Matrimony, aimed at captivating global audiences and piquing their interest in our island's vibrant, unexplored green spaces. The production will have deep technological cross-fertilization with the animation studio at Cove. They will also develop we will also develop state-of-the-art rehearsal spaces, high-tech recording studios, and a well-equipped production hub aimed at improving the performance spaces and improving the quality of performances. No longer, Madam Presiding Officer, will we dump them in a big empty building and hope for magic and miracles to happen. We will outfit the spaces properly. We will host a children's arts camp named Creative Calabash that will be an immersive arts camp designed for children to explore and express their creativity, thereby assisting to nurture the next generation of artistic talents. Madam Presiding Officer, the Festival Commission also has a crucial role to play as we elevate our exploitation of the opportunities in the orange economy. This year, we have taken a deliberate decision to do a scaled-down version of the 36th Tobago Heritage Festival. We intend to restructure the festival to widen and sweeten its attractiveness, its cultural appeal, and its sustainability. If we are honest, we will agree that over the years, the Tobago Heritage Festival lost some of its sweetness. Yes. And that there is a need for us to return to the drawing board and give it its first real update, I guess, since Dr. J.D. Eller. Likewise, the Tobago Jazz Experience is being purposefully reviewed for economic viability and resilience. In relation to our October Carnival, the newest addition to the island's calendar of festivals, we have taken note of the lessons learned from the introductory event last year. Our public officers, technocrats, and producers are actively working on improving the carnival for this year. If only, Madam Presiding Officer, flights will be available this year. While these festivals are not intended to produce a financial return to the THA, our policy going forward is to ensure that they are executed in keeping with the principles of value for money. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to turn to education. Madam Presiding Officer, we cannot develop a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient society without delivering 21st century education and skills to Tobagonians. As stated before, we live in a very complex and digitally fluid world. Therefore, for us to participate effectively in the new world, our students, our teachers and workers in education need to think critically, communicate effectively, collaborate with diverse peers, solve complex problems, adopt a global mindset, and engage robustly with information and communication technologies. Madam Presiding Officer, to achieve this, we must create an education system based on established learning pathways that link knowledge systems, teaching methodologies, and outcomes with real-world problems. This model requires us to upgrade and modernize our learning and teaching infrastructures. It also presents the need for the ongoing retraining and upgrading of the capacity and capability of educators and instructors. I want to turn my attention now to the immediate and pressing need for changes in the education system post-COVID. We have learned valuable lessons from COVID-19 that can help us build a resilient education system. COVID has taught us that at short notice, we must be able to move seamlessly from an in-person model of teaching to learning on an online model. Madam Presiding Officer, one key lesson we did not learn, however, Madam Presiding Officer, one key lesson we did not learn, however, is that the ideal response to a fast-moving and precipitous change, such as those brought on by COVID-19, is an online system that is mainly asynchronous. Such a system involves the student working independently at mostly his or her own pace and with his or her own schedule that are different from other students. It also involves the teacher providing instruction intermittently. We cannot just move the classroom and go online with the same techniques and strategies. What we have done, not us, but those whom we succeeded, is to transition from an in-person, face-to-face, synchronous system to an online face-to-face, synchronous system. And we need to move from synchronous to asynchronous. Madam Presiding Officer, while the latter has its benefits, it still retains many elements of the in-person synchronous system. Many teachers will argue that online face-to-face teaching and learning is as demanding as in-person teaching and learning. What we need to develop, Madam Presiding Officer, is an online system that will allow students who can learn independently to do so with intermittent teacher supervision. It will also allow parents with the capacity and time to teach their children at home. This component that requires parental assistance can be linked to an official THA work from home policy in the future. Madam Presiding Officer, the idea of an online education system, as I have articulated here, will lead to a decrease in synchronous teaching contact time online. Supporting an online asynchronous system will mean building an online education architecture to support self-directed and parent-assisted teaching and learning. This will also support those in the system that are deemed talented or fast learners, the bright bulbs as we call them. This is one of our core educational development projects for fiscal 2024. We have done the research and are now in the design stage. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, we propose to execute the following projects and programs in fiscal 2024. Upgrading and modernizing of our schools towards smart school classification and certification. Special and targeted programs to deal with the COVID-19 induced learning losses. Commencement of pre-construction works for the new Scarborough Secondary Smart School. Continuous teacher-instructor training and capacity enhancement towards the delivery of 21st century education and skills. Construction of a modern school for the hearing impaired at Signal Hill. Repurposing of our school nutrition program into a significant component of a general school health program. This is intended to address the rising levels of obesity and other non-communicable diseases among our children. Introduction of a dual-track system of education and training by establishing at least 2 technical training institutes. A strong policy consideration here is the conversion of Roxborough Secondary School into one such institution. We are also aware, Madam Presiding Officer, of the fact that we cannot develop a resilient and prosperous society in any sustainable manner unless we protect and safeguard the health and well-being of our citizens. In this regard, we are aiming at developing our healthcare and social protection systems in ways that are innovative, responsive, and positioned to deliver holistic, high-quality, client-centered health and social protection to the people of Tobago. This requires improvement in our healthcare facilities, improvement, and I'll say this one loudly, in our customer service at our healthcare facilities, and in the quantity and quality of healthcare practitioners, and the deployment of more technologically driven and efficient management systems. Therefore, we will continue to invest in developing a modern healthcare system and promote and protect the interests of our vulnerable groups. Madam Presiding Officer, in fiscal 2024, the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection proposed to expand the neonatal care unit, or ICU, at an estimated cost of $1.8 million to increase its capacity for the treatment of newborns, expand the oncology unit to provide more access to screening and long-term dignified care for our cancer patients at an estimated cost of $2.5 million, acquire an MRI machine at a cost of $10 million, and a 64-slice CT scanner at a cost of $7 million, upgrade the Canaan Health Center to a district facility. This will allow for 24-hour service, increased diagnostic services, the treatment of a wider variety of ailments and injuries, and enhanced screening at the facility. The strategic goal is to promote healthcare delivery at the community level. The Division of Health will procure 10 new ambulances for use by the Tobago Emergency Medical Services, or TEMS Department, at an estimated cost of $12 million. Upgrade the Plymouth Health Center to better service the needs of patients. Conduct an intensive educational health promotional campaign to treat with the rising incidence of non-communicable diseases. This will include well-being counseling related to exercise, nutrition, and early screening for lifestyle diseases. Develop a structured program for continuous training and upgrading of our medical and support staff with cutting-edge medical knowledge. Undertake an education drive to enlighten and empower persons with scientific facts on mental health, and to expand the capacity of the mental health unit to better serve the needs of the population. Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to shift gears to our efforts to provide social protection to at-risk groups. We realize that as development occurs, whether we like it or not, there will be unintended consequences because of socioeconomic and other factors. COVID-19 pandemic placed significant stresses on our social support systems, making it necessary for us to widen our safety net to protect the vulnerable. We have to take care of these people. In fact, a society is judged by how well it caters for its at-risk groups. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, as we move towards making Tobago the greatest little island on the planet, we are committed to building resilience, efficiency, and effectiveness into our social protection program. In this regard, we propose to intensify efforts to fully digitize, not partially, fully digitize the social protection processes as part of our MyTHA project to ensure greater accessibility and more timely delivery of support to our most vulnerable. Restructured the Social Protection Department to ensure that staff at all levels are provided with capacity building opportunities in the areas of leadership, industrial relations, public service policies, performance management, report writing, and Social Protection Department policies. Review policies and streamline the processes of the Social Protection Department to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion, and more importantly, to ensure that no one is left behind. Institute a robust community engagement program across the island, where the staff of the Social Protection Department are available at our health centers, community centers, and other community-based facilities to deliver greater access to the services of the department, and review and streamline the processes for the social emergency card and food card unit to ensure greater public accountability and transparency. Madam Presiding Officer, let me now turn to housing. Madam Presiding Officer, the availability of affordable housing is perhaps one of the most significant issues facing my administration. But while we acknowledge this, we also note that this is not a peculiar Tobago problem. It is obvious that it is now quite difficult for the average Tobagonian to realize their dream of home ownership. The average conventional 3-bedroom house in Trinidad and Tobago is somewhere in the vicinity of 1.5 million. When we add the price differential for Tobago, we could be looking at a price closer to 1.7 million. To qualify for a mortgage for this amount will require a household income of more than $30,000 monthly or $300,000 annually. In light of the fact that the majority of Tobagonians do not make that kind of money, any proposal for housing solutions for Tobagonians must include significant subsidies from the THA. Madam Presiding Officer, the question is how much subsidy the THA can really afford, especially given its perennial underfunding by the central government. We inherited a database of approximately 7,500 applicants. We have to respond to the housing needs of all applicants with careful consideration of the available resources. Madam Presiding Officer, our response to the housing needs of Tobagonians is made even more urgent given the increasing demand for housing in Tobago, the number of low-income households, and the high price of reasonable accommodation on the rental market. The problem is further exacerbated by climate change-related issues. Our response to this affordable housing crisis is by way of policy prescriptions with the objective of meeting the housing needs of applicants. The policy prescriptions speak to a basket of approaches. We have already begun the rollout of our policies. To this end, we have just completed a successful pilot project entitled Home Ownership Made Equal. The timing and launch of this program, Madam Presiding Officer, are significant. And what we are doing is sending a strong signal to those who are least able to afford a home that their assembly is prepared to put them at the head of the line. In keeping with the lessons emanating from our recent mission to Jamaica, the Executive Council has mandated the Secretary of Settlement to supply 20 low-cost units for Tobagonians before the end of current fiscal 2023. Madam Presiding Officer, at the same time, we have announced and launched the largest housing construction initiative in the history of Tobago. Our ambition is to deliver more than 500 housing units to Tobagonians. The Division of Settlements, Public Utilities and Rural Development has already issued a request for proposals, and we are asking Tobago contractors to come and join us. Go to your banks and begin to raise the finance and get registered with the Office of Procurement Regulator. Madam Presiding Officer, we also intend to put about 800 service lots across the island on the market. We know the success of this tried and true formula of providing service lots to Tobagonians and the beneficiaries, and that has produced some of the most beautiful homes on the island. The housing developments such as Signal Hill, Susolands, Calder Hall, and Belgarden provide the evidence that the provision of affordable service lots is one of the best solutions to Tobago housing affordability crisis. We intend to continue this strategy and provide service lots at Shervan, Corlan, Adelphi, and the Riseland. In Tobago East, we are targeting the Louisdor Estate and the Roxburgh Estate and other villages where there are appropriate lands to drive our village expansion project. Madam Presiding Officer, these new initiatives will be packed with our existing programs, including our home improvement grants. We are also exploring a rental assistance program, separate and apart from the one across at Health and Social Services. We are actively designing a program with the associated feasibility calculations of running a pilot involving low-income single mothers and single fathers. The pilot will tell us how sustainable the program could be. The rental assistance program would immediately bring relief to many families struggling to pay monthly rent. It would also free up much needed income, which could be used to purchase other essentials such as groceries and personal care products. We recognize that a major housing challenge is the lack of a coherent and comprehensive housing policy. We intend to fix this, and to this end, the Division of Settlements, Public Utilities and Rural Development is currently working on its Tobago Comprehensive Housing Strategy. Madam Presiding Officer, our housing development strategy will focus on establishing the institutional framework for the implementation of the housing strategy, analyzing demographic trends. They will look at determining housing demand and needs. They will look at assessing the current housing stock. They will look at locating available and suitable lands, analyzing the financial feasibility and fiscal capacity, conducting infrastructure and utility audits, and determining future infrastructure and utility requirements. Madam Presiding Officer, in addition to our core public sector projects, programs and strategies listed, this Assembly is committed to partnering and working with private housing developers to deliver affordable housing solutions to the market. I now speak to our strategy for building sustainable, prosperous, and resilient communities. Madam Presiding Officer, in every sense of the word, Tobago is an island of tight-knit communities. In fact, I have often quipped, in Tobago, our families are larger than our villages. Therefore, the building of sustainable, prosperous, and resilient communities, child by child, family by family, and village by village, remains a key development goal of this administration. However, we must be mindful of the challenges we face at the community level. Our resources are limited, and demands for resources are increasing, and we are witnessing the alarming consequences of environmental and social degradation with the stark realities of the changing global economic environment impacting every sector. But I firmly believe that within every challenge lies an opportunity for growth and positive change. One of our sustainable community development programs for fiscal 2024 is a comprehensive capacity building program called Take Charge, designed to help communities take responsibility for and control of their human capital, as well as their physical and financial resources. Key components of this program are family management training across all communities, mastering aspects of community cohesion and organization, or MACO, community leadership training, spiritual welfare seminars with faith-based organizations to improve social community care, after-school and mentorship programs, including but not limited to homework centers, institutional strengthening of youth and sport community-based organizations, including village and community councils, returning critical community infrastructure to the leadership and management of community organizations. Madam Presiding Officer, another one of our programs is a skill sharing and exchange program aimed at promoting self-sufficiency and resourcefulness. This program is designed to empower and encourage community members to step up and share their skills, knowledge, and resources with each other, thereby fostering a culture of collaboration and sustainability. Key elements of this program are the Tobago Road Market Experience and Community Trade Shows, creating platforms for trade, product sharing, and development of cooperative ventures, a handicraft training and exchange program, promoting intergenerational partnerships and the transfer of indigenous knowledge and skills. Mako, a different kind of Mako now, one that was inherited, by the way, male mentorship and internship program aimed at providing structured leadership, support, and guidance to our young males, and sport and youth development, youth leadership development training programs. Madam Presiding Officer, we have also programmed the implementation of a number of community prosperity and empowerment initiatives. These include the hosting of the annual vocational skills training program to provide community-based introductory training and prior learning assessment and certification of skilled persons through our network of community youth and multipurpose centers, the establishment of the Tobago Skills Development Training Center, which will offer Level 1 and Level 2 CVQ or Caribbean Vocational Qualification, and the Trinidad and Tobago National Vocational Qualification that assess and certify individuals' competence in various occupational areas, thus integrating literacy development and improvement, encouragement and support of innovation and enterprise development through the hosting of targeted apprenticeship programs in such areas as agriculture and agro-processing, exploration and implementation of initiatives in the blue economic sector, such as aquaculture techniques and training. By embracing the principles of the blue economy, our coastal communities will be empowered to harness the economic potential of their marine parks while safeguarding their long-term health and economic prosperity. Madam Presiding Officer, through sustainable practices, responsible governance, and meaningful community engagement, we will create a more prosperous and resilient future that balances the island's economic growth with its environmental sustainability requirements. Moreover, Madam Presiding Officer, to build resilience and social cohesion at the community level, we propose the activation of the community management systems and protocols embodied in the work of community councils and other civil society institutions. This will entail the active mainstreaming of the operations of the village and community councils, youth councils, and sporting associations based on the establishment of standards of operations, certification, contribution agreements, and monitoring and evaluation. The implementation of a comprehensive volunteerism and youth and national service program to foster community pride, strengthen community cohesiveness, and encourage civic engagement for the betterment of our communities. the implementation of a Tobago Community Safety Program as an initiative for enhancing the safety, security, and well-being of our communities. The Safe Community Competition campaign emanating from this program will represent the accumulation of active capacity building, awareness and education, and implementation of people-centered policing and positive engagement. Madam Presiding Officer, these initiatives form part of a wider body of work to treat directly with the security and safety issues confronting our communities. Madam Presiding Officer, please allow me to turn to youth and sport development. The holistic development of young people constitutes another top priority of my administration. In this regard, we see the investments in our youth as a critical and necessary input towards developing a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient society. Relatedly, our strategic goals are to create the socio-economic and institutional enabling environment that is populated with practical opportunities for young people to exploit for self-actualization. Our first order of business is to strengthen the institutional capacity and the capability of the youth department to better serve our young people. In this regard, we are going to train and reskill the staff and develop new and more efficient ways of treating with the diverse needs of our young people. In fiscal 2024, we intend to elevate our youth interface with the aim of better meeting their needs. In this regard, we propose to deliver the following youth development projects and program. A much more extensive job skill training program than the one we have now to prepare our youth for a more seamless entry into the world of work. Provision of financial literacy education and training with a focus on digital currencies, saving, investment, and business development. The Financial Literacy Secretariat of the Division of Finance, Trade and Economy will spearhead this initiative with a set target of 1,000 participants in fiscal 2024. Aggressive search for internship opportunities for our young and upcoming professionals at national, regional, and international institutions such as central banks, the Caribbean Development Bank, Caribbean Community or CARICOM, the IDB, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Madam Presiding Officer, as I speak, 2 of our tertiary students are at the central bank on internship, but unfortunately, a 3rd student declined the opportunity. Youth and technology development training geared towards equipping our young people with the soft technical skills to function efficiently in this technologically driven world are needed. This program will be delivered by the Tobago Information Technology Limited, and we are aiming to have 1,200 young people participating in this program in fiscal 2024. A youth invention program which will provide financial and technical support to young innovators and inventors. This program will be also executed by TITL with a target of at least 500 participants in fiscal 2024. The institution of a Know Your Tobago history program aimed at developing the civic mindedness and consciousness of our youth about the socio-economic and political history of the island. In fiscal 2024, we are aiming to have at least 1,000 youths participate in this program. A youth health project designed to promote healthy living and life choices among the young people with easy and direct access to testing and screening through our healthcare facilities. In fiscal 2024, we propose to test and screen 1,200 youths working in collaboration with youth organizations and other community-based entities. Madam Presiding Officer, in fiscal 2024, we propose to intensify our ongoing efforts to create a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient sporting sector in Tobago. In this regard, we propose to implement the following: technical and financial support for our sporting organizations with the aim of increasing the use of science and technology in their training and development programs. This will be accompanied by the necessary institutional strengthening and system management development at the level of the organizations. That is because, Madam Presiding Officer, we are witnessing far too many instances of sporting organizations in disarray and having internal conflicts that they cannot seem to manage. The upgrading and modernization of sporting facilities throughout the island to facilitate the seamless use of sports science and smart technology. The sustainability and resilience of this program will be built on a community-based maintenance and management model. That was also in the mandate. The model will operate on formal contribution agreements between our sporting organizations and the division, which will keep the monitoring and evaluation functions in keeping with its policy directives. This is straight from the mandate upon which we campaign. The training and retraining of our coaches in 21st century skills and knowledge with emphasis on sports, science, health and technology. Support for our sportmen and sportwomen to meet the academic standards required to obtain international sporting scholarships. A recognition and reward system which will provide performance incentives to our sportsmen and sportswomen who excel at regional and international events, and improve the system of monitoring and evaluating coaches assigned to our school sports program, a sport internship program in which our sportmen and sportwomen are sent on learning journeys at high performance centers, regionally and internationally. A sport health program that provides medical and dietary support and knowledge to our sportsmen and sportwomen to ensure that they will perform at their optimum. Madam Presiding Officer, in the area of sport infrastructure development, we propose to move ahead with the construction of a baccalaureate indoor facility in a manner that will allow for international events to be held there. My administration has taken the conscious decision to expand the scope of this project and thereby giving it the chance of being commercially viable and making it into a facility that will give impetus to our sport tourism efforts. As for the Goodwood Pavilion that was being constructed without proper consultation with the residents and other stakeholder groups, my administration has painfully decided to continue with the visibly vexing project because of the huge costs associated with relocation. Moreover, Madam Presiding Officer, my administration is currently in discussion with an international entity that is interested in establishing a modern cricket stadium in Tobago. This development will enhance Tobago's sport tourism offerings. With such a facility, we can approach the Caribbean T20 franchise holders, for example, with a proposal to include Tobago in their annual T20 calendar. The proposal from the international entity has already been received by the THA and is currently being reviewed. Lands for motor sporting, or motor racing and drag racing has been identified, and the survey works are almost at completion at the Friendship Estate. That's another major opportunity for sport tourism. Madam Presiding Officer, as you know, we are in the process of getting a number of facilities ready for our hosting of the 2023 Commonwealth Youth Games in August. Our approach is to ensure that Tobago sportsmen and sportswomen benefit from the upgrade works long after the games are finished. In this regard, we are building the first full-size beach volleyball facility in the entire country at Blackrock. This is a significant legacy item. In keeping with this strategy, we are very deliberate with our purchasing of the equipment for these 4 sporting disciplines to be hosted in Tobago, namely beach football, beach volleyball, netball, rugby, and the triathlon. We are also hosting the closing ceremony, which we have taken a decision to use as a global marketing event for our tourism efforts. Therefore, let me take the opportunity to invite all of Tobago to come out and support the games and display our sweet Tobago love and hospitality. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me to look at our strategy for infrastructure development and to also take a drink of water at that. Madam Presiding Officer, early in our first year in office, we completed a reconnaissance and an assessment of our road networks, coastal and terrestrial retaining structures, and our drainage systems. What we found was that the infrastructure, generally speaking, outlived its useful life cycle, particularly design standards that are not aligned to changing climatic conditions. We also discovered significant deficits in our infrastructure requirements. Our initial assessment led to a twofold response strategy, including the upgrading of maintaining existing infrastructure works when necessary, while at the same time executing new projects based on our new environmental realities and requirements. Madam Presiding Officer, the response to our infrastructure challenges has been further exacerbated by the damage caused to road network and retaining systems in the northeast of the island by the unusual levels of rainfall in the latter part of 2022. Fixing Tobago's infrastructure deficit is a multi-year, multi-dimensional, and multi-generational undertaking. Notwithstanding, this administration recognizes the importance of green, modern, and resilient infrastructure as a necessary prerequisite to stimulating economic activities, social development, safety, and the general enhancement of the life of Tobagonians. Therefore, we must develop our infrastructure and do so at a scale and rate that can quickly, not slowly, but quickly transform the Tobago economy. In fiscal 2024, this administration proposes to accelerate the restoration and upgrade of the island's road network that was damaged by the unusually high levels of rainfall in the latter part of 2022. Some of the places where major works are scheduled to be done under this program are Bad Rock, that's in Belgarden, the Roxborough Bloody Bay Road, the Castara Road, and the Charlottesville-Lansome Link Road. No fault of mine that most of these exist in my district. The division will conduct coastal protection and restoration of works at Grange Bay, Black Rock, Pigeon Point, Crown Point, Lambeau, and Roxborough. Upgrade the drainage infrastructure in areas prone to flooding, such as Canby, Lowlands, Canaan, Crown Point, and Scarborough. Resurface and upgrade works to primary and secondary roads across the island. Accelerate work on the Friendship Bypass Road and the Bonaccord to Pigeon Point Road, which are critical to treat with growing traffic congestion in the Canaan, Bonaccord, and Crown Point areas. Commence pre-construction works on the Scarborough Development Project, which will include over time a modern cruise port, an administrative complex, a hotel, a modern commercial plaza with connections to a parkade and a transportation hub. This project also includes upgrading green spaces, including the Botanical Gardens and Fort King George, and the construction of a utility corridor in Scarborough to pass Tiantec lines and all other utility cables underground. Madam Presiding Officer, to improve efficiency and effectiveness in the management of our infrastructure work or infrastructure projects, we envisage a greater role for EID Cut. The company has been mandated to enhance its project management and procurement management capabilities and capacities to take on this critical responsibility. This has become even more necessary given UDCOT's unusual decision to disengage from doing projects for the THA. Madam Presiding Officer, I now turn to environment, climate change, and energy transition. The THA administration remains committed to fully exploiting all opportunities for the conservation of our natural resources and the socio-economic development and marketing of Tobago that comes with the designation of the Northeast as a UNESCO Man-made Biosphere Reserve. Central to this effort is the meaningful inclusion of non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, and the business community in the decision-making process regarding the governance of the Biosphere Reserve in accordance with democratic ideals. Accordingly, this administration has already put things in place for the establishment of a management trust through which a progressive and inclusive management arrangement will be implemented. The governance framework will provide the opportunity for representatives of the THA, civil society, and the private sector to have an equal and meaningful influence on the management of resources in the reserve, which is critical to the socio-economic well-being of our people. Investment in the blue economy is growing increasingly in small island developing states. The real promise of the pursuit of a blue economy agenda is rooted in the conservation of the ecology and resources in the blue space, while providing a sustainable socio-economic future for our people based on the wise use of those resources. The potential of the oceans, coastal resources, and other aquatic resources to help meet many of our socio-economic ideals is significant. Having our oceans and coastal waters are under increasing pressure from many misuses and threats that are both natural and anthropogenic in nature, threats that are local, and might I join with ATFA in highlighting threats that are international. I will not attempt to share an exhaustive list of threats, but offer instead three of the most common, which are climate change, marine pollution, and overexploitation of resources rooted in less than an effective management. If we in Tobago are to unlock this potential and effectively pursue the investment in the development in the blue economy in an effort to meet the diverse and growing needs of our people, it is critical that we commit to following an approach that integrates science-based environmental management directly with economic development and social development goals. This administration intends to do exactly that by developing and rolling out a strategy for considered, restructured, long-term investment in the blue space. In this regard, the THA has collaborated with the Inter-American Development Bank in developing a blue economy roadmap report geared towards identifying the most effective and sustainable pathway for us to use ocean resources and associated marine ecosystems in our development. Key recommendations coming out of that roadmap are restoration of marine ecosystems while providing local food security and resilient livelihoods, development of resilient coastal infrastructure, definition, let me say this again, definition of Tobago's marine boundaries through adjustments to existing legislation, oil and gas energy transition to marine renewables, the development of a Center for Maritime Research and Blue Economy Technology Development, and port expansion to support blue growth activities. All of these coming out of the report done with the IDB. We will continue to work with the IDB towards implementing these initiatives. Other environmental initiatives for this administration for the fiscal year include economic valuation of our natural resources, including forests, wetlands, and coastal resources like seagrass beds and coral reefs, to document our contribution to addressing the climate crisis more comprehensively, as well as support trading of green and blue carbon credits as a contribution towards GDP. Further developing and implementing strategies that help to build climate resilience at the community level, including a more focused exploration of nature-based infrastructural solutions to the challenges we face. Building an effort over the last fiscal period regarding the installation of renewable energy infrastructure for use at public facilities on the island. The intention is to expand this drive to widen the use of renewable energy at public facilities and incentivize adoption at residential and commercial levels. Madam Presiding Officer, the leading conversation emanating from the United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP27, was compensation for less developed countries, including small island developing states, for loss and damage arising from issues related to climate change. At COP27, the leading nations in the world accepted that their economies were significant contributors to climate change. They also committed to contributing US $100 billion annually in climate financing. Madam Presiding Officer, we do not know how Tobago will benefit from this compensation because we were not involved in the negotiations at COP. While we hope to benefit from compensation for loss and damage, we must do what we must to protect our environment. To this end, we seek to allocate a budget of $20 million under the new line item, Climate and Energy Transition Financing. And this will allow us to establish a climate energy fund to finance our response to climate-related disasters. So we put in place our own insurance policy.
Very good.
Retrofit some of our existing buildings as we transition to more renewable sources of energy. Establish a pilot solar panel farm at the Cove Eco-Industrial Estate. Establish an incentive program for hotels and guest houses to transition to more renewable sources of energy. And establish EV or electric vehicle charging stations in Scarborough, Canaan, Roxborough, Castara, and Charlottesville. Going forward, we will establish our energy transition policy to guide a more targeted, coherent, and robust net zero strategy, and our biodiversity protection policy and our no net loss biodiversity protection strategy. Taking a protected area approach to environmental management makes sense, Madam Presiding Officer, because invariably we'll be focusing on protecting more than 4,000 hectares of landmass of Tobago, including the main rich forest reserve, Little Tobago and Giles Islands, and perhaps other areas that we can designate as protected and marine space, including the Boko Reef Lagoon Complex and other reef areas such as Corland, Speyside, that contribute significantly to Tobago's social and economic development. In the meantime, Madam Presiding Officer, we have developed a proposal for establishing the Tobago Coastal Management Agency. The agency will represent a significant upgrade from what exists currently as a coastal unit within the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. The institutional upgrade and strengthening will result in the agency being staffed with expertise in not just coastal engineering as we have now, but coastal design, coastal modeling, giving us the institutional capacity to scientifically undertake the management of Tobago's coastal areas fully. Given its design, the TCMA will be able to create approximately 25 jobs for young professional Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, the foregoing constitutes the programs, projects, initiatives that are designed to meet our strategic policy goal of laying the foundation for a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient Tobago. This is the framework that will ensure that we develop Tobago into the greatest little island on the planet. Madam Presiding Officer, while we acknowledge the need for and have started the work for preparing a comprehensive development plan, the world is not waiting on us. Therefore, we have to implement critical aspects of the development plan while we continue to work towards the completion of the plan. Some intellectuals among us don't seem to have any appreciation for this tactical requirement. And as the executive head of this administration, it is incumbent on me to have such an appreciation. That said, Madam Presiding Officer, I now present the draft estimates of expenditure for fiscal 2024. Madam Presiding Officer, the total estimates of expenditure for fiscal 2024 amount to 4.54 billion, of which recurrent expenditure estimates amount to 3.39 billion, development expenditure estimates to 1.15 billion, URP expenditure to 97.07 million, and CPEP expenditure to 44.77 million. Madam Presiding Officer, using historical trends, our forecast produces a national budget of around 65.78 billion for fiscal 2024. So we are forecasting that the national budget will be around 65.78 billion for fiscal 2024. In fact, Madam Presiding Officer, our forecast last year was spot on. Accordingly, the Assembly's total estimated expenditure was predicated on a national budget, or is predicated on a national budget of 65.78 billion for 2024 and a revenue share of 6.9%, in keeping with the upper end of the Dispute Resolution Commission's recommendation, which is at this point the legal requirements of the government. Let me add, Madam Presiding Officer, that the central government nor the Minister of Finance are in need of no other action to be able to give us 6.9%, except to recognize that the Dispute Resolution Commission has already given it.
Let's say it one more time.
Therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, any attempt to extort Tobago's support for an incomplete legislative arrangement for Tobago's autonomy in order to get 6.9% will be soundly rebuffed. It will appear, Madam Presiding Officer, as if the party in charge in Trinidad likes to extort things from the THA. It is our hope that the Prime Minister will demonstrate this resurged love for Tobago and his sensitivity to the socio-economic realities of the island, and instruct his Minister of Finance to break with the tradition of allocating the THA a customary $4.03 of every $100 spent in Trinidad.
Hope so.
$4.03, Madam Presiding Officer, is what they believe we are valued at. $4.03. Madam Presiding Officer, the current estimates for fiscal 2024 totaling 3.40 billion are disaggregated as follows. Personnel expenditure, 854 million. Goods and services, 1,042 million. Minor equipment purchases, 125.5 million. Current transfers and subsidies, 1,424,000.8 million. In fact, allow me to read it again. I read one of the figures incorrectly. Personnel expenditure, 854 million. Goods and services, 1,042,000.1 million. Minor equipment purchases, 125.5 million. Current transfers and subsidies, 1,424,000.8. Madam Presiding Officer, in fiscal 2024, the recurrent expenditure of the Assembly is programmed to increase by 193.2 million, or 16.3%, over the amount requested for fiscal 2023. 6.3% increase in the request for recurrent expenditure this year over last year. The disaggregation of the recurrent estimates by divisions for fiscal 2024 is as follows. Assembly Legislature, 29.99 million. Office of the Chief Secretary, 253.74 million. Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary, 43.77 million. Finance, Trade and Economy, 323.27 million. Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, 243.26 million. Education, research and technology, 574.31 million. Community development, youth development and sport, 162.84 million. Infrastructure, quarries and the environment, 517.14 million. Food security, natural resources, the environment and sustainable development, 263.84 million. Health, wellness and social protection, 933.92 million. And settlements, public utilities and rural development, 41.91 million. Madam Presiding Officer, some major program recurrent expenditures for fiscal 2024, some major highlights as follows. TRA, Trinidad Tobago Regional Health Authority, 602.6 million. School feeding program, 60.5 million. Tobago Tourism Agency Limited, 60 million. Stolly Park Enterprises Limited, 60 million. Project financing repayments, 60 million. Development of mega farms, 51.7 million. Tobago Festival Commission, 50 million. Tobago Agri Business Development Company, 27.5 million. Development of green spaces, 20 million. Reforestation and watershed rehabilitation, 16.7 million. Tobago Performing Arts Company, 15 million. Information Technology Systems, or Information Technology Center, 12.9 million. And assistance to sporting organizations, 5.8 million. I will now present the development program estimates. Madam Presiding Officer, the estimates for the development program for fiscal 2024 amount to 1.15 billion. This represents an increase of 250 million or 27.8% over the 900 million requested for fiscal 2023. Across the sectors, the estimates are disaggregated as follows. Pre-investment, 1 million. Productive sectors, 1.5 million. Economic infrastructure, 403.55 million. Social infrastructure, 563.38 million. And multi-sectoral and other services, 181.57 million. Madam Presiding Officer, in keeping with our strategic objectives to drive the business development and stimulate the economy, the development program estimates provide support for EID cut, 14 million, venture capital, 10 million, business incubator program, 8 million, enterprise development loan program, 5 million, enterprise assistance grant program, 5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, as we move to build sustainability and resilience into our tourism sector, the development estimate or the development program estimates cater for Tobago Tourism Agency on the development side, 16 million. Pigeon Point Infrastructure Works, 7 million. Storbay Beach Facilities, 6 million. Restoration of historical sites, 2.7 million. And construction of Tobago cruise ship berths, 2 million. Madam Presiding Officer, as we strive to attain food sovereignty, the development program estimates provides for construction of 2 abattoirs at 20 million, livestock production and health, 10 million, improvement to beach and landing facilities, 6 million, establishment of TARI, 3 million. Madam Presiding Officer, we continue the program of modernization of our education system to deliver 21st century education and skills. Our development program estimates make provision as follows. Improvements to primary schools, 18.5 million. Improvement to secondary schools, 8 million. Upgrade of Mason Hall Government Secondary School, 5 million. Construction of childhood centers, early childhood centers, 4 million. Pre-construction consultation on Scarborough Secondary, 4 million. Construction of a school for the deaf, 1 million. Madam Presiding Officer, as we seek to provide affordable housing solutions and improve our housing stock on the island, our development program estimates provides for an integrated housing development at Shervan, 100 million, a home improvement grant and subsidy, 17 million, an affordable housing project, 15 million, development of Adventure Phase 2, 12 million, a housing development incentive program, 10 million, and a village expansion program for Shallerville, 8 million. Madam Presiding Officer, we continue to upgrade and expand our road infrastructure and protect our coastline from the harmful effects of coastal erosion. Accordingly, our development program estimates provide for major improvement works on secondary roads, 35 million, road resurfacing program, 32 million, Windward Road special development program, and that could be called Country Road, 15 million, a Scarborough enhancement project, 12 million, construction of sea defense systems, 8 million, a Turpin Bend solution, 6 million, improvement to Milford Road bridges, 5 million, rehabilitation of Cornwall Highway, 3 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the development program estimates are associated with the critical and strategic areas identified as necessary to start the building of a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient Tobago. It is my hope that the Minister of Finance will recognize and appreciate the importance of the proposed body of development works and provide for a more meaningful allocation consistent with the needs identified. Further, in fiscal 2024, we intend to spend 92.07 million and 44.47 million for URP and CPEP respectively. These figures are programmed based on the increases in salaries for the workers in these programs. Madam Presiding Officer, I now present the financing options. For fiscal 2024, the estimates of tax and non-tax revenues are as follows. Taxes on income and profits, 132.25 million. Taxes on property, 5 million. Taxes on goods and services, 65.86 million. Taxes on international trade, 2.7 million. Other taxes, 4.1 million. Total tax revenue, 209.91 million, and that's taxes collected in Tobago. Property income tax, 0.09 million. Other non-tax revenue, 1.45 million. Total non-tax revenue of 1.54 million, with total revenue through taxes, 211.45 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the total revenue projected to be collected for Tobago in fiscal 2024 is 211.45 million. It must be noted here that the revenue projections above do not represent Tobago's true revenue generating capacity. As you know, several entities are operating in Tobago and are illegally paying their taxes in Trinidad, notwithstanding the dictates of the law. This is in direct contravention of 49(2) of THA Act 40 of 1996, which requires that those institutions with subsidiaries operating in Tobago should pay the subsidiary taxes in Tobago. This situation must be comprehensively addressed in any constitutional and legislative upgrade designed to afford Tobago true internal self-government. For instance, Madam Presiding Officer, and I wish the minority leader was in the house for this. For instance, Madam Presiding Officer, The government of Trinidad and Tobago receives revenues from oil and gas exploration from 4 revenue streams: royalties, a supplementation petroleum tax, the petroleum profit tax, and the unemployment levy. The revenue derived from oil and gas exploration amounts to about 25% of all oil and gas revenues. Using a rough estimate of 25%, the revenue derived from the Calypso field alone, and which is in Tobago waters, let me say it loudly for those on the other side who don't know the geography, the revenue derived from the Calypso field alone, and which is in Tobago waters, will put approximately 19 billion into the treasury of Trinidad and Tobago in the current fiscal year, based on our technical calculations. This is exactly what we mean when we stated above that the 211 million collected in Tobago does not represent Tobago's true revenue generating capacity. And when their numbskull friends down in the other place make it look as if Tobagonians are beggars and that we do not contribute meaningfully to the national purse, please point them to just one alone, Calypso Field, and show them that we are dignified contributors to the national economy. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly has continued its engagement with various multilateral agencies, including IMF, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the Inter-American Development Bank to access grant funding, loans, and technical support for some of our infrastructure projects. In this regard, discussions continued with the Inter-American Development Bank for a repurposing of the Scarborough Renewal Program and the Riceland Housing Development. Additionally, this administration continues to hold discussions and work with the Development Bank of Latin America, CAF, and the Ministry of Finance to draw down the 100 million that has been approved for coastal protection and restoration works on the island. Madam Presiding Officer, to drive our foreign direct investment strategy, this administration has taken the policy decision to develop and publish a comprehensive prospectus that will highlight all of the available investment opportunities on the island and the approximate timelines to obtain the required statutory approvals. This arrangement will make it easier for foreign investors to do business in Tobago. We are opening Tobago for business, Madam Presiding Officer. And let today's budget presentation serve as a public notice that we are calling investors far and wide to come and do business with the THA and the Tobago private sector. We have received a few exciting and promising expressions of interest from the investors with which we are working. Our diaspora investment strategy remains active. In this regard, we have completed the engineering and designing of our online diaspora registration platform as presented, and this platform will be the main vehicle by which members of the diaspora are targeted and encouraged to invest in their homeland. Madam Presiding Officer, to continue to treat with our budgetary constraints, we will creatively and judiciously utilize the design build finance modalities to execute some of our housing development projects as well as other major public infrastructure works. Long-term borrowing. Madam Presiding Officer, it has been said repeatedly in this Honorable House over the years that the THA budget is significantly underfunded, especially as it relates to the development program. The cottage industry development budget that is allocated annually to Tobago will certainly not allow us to modernize and upgrade the island's infrastructure. In the face of this debilitating reality, this administration has been actively exploring the option of utilizing EID cut to engage in long-term borrowing to fund critical infrastructure projects on the island. We are open to discussing this and any other viable option with the central government. Arrears of previous years. Madam Presiding Officer, as I indicated earlier, the THA is owed $152 million in arrears from approved parliamentary allocations from fiscal 2017 to 2022, as well as an additional $53 million from the 2023 mid-year review in keeping with the DRC recommendation. I'm again calling on the central government and in particular to the Prime Minister in this one instance to mind Tobago business and give us the money owed to us. Madam Presiding Officer, as I conclude today's presentation, please permit me to leave you with a few parting words. Allow me to share some reflections on where our beloved island is along the development curve and the structural issues that we must collectively respond to. Tobago is our island. We live here, we work here, and we play here, and most of us will die here. Some of us don't seem to understand this. Many of us like to profess our love for this island, but the behavior of some leads me to question their love for Tobago. If we truly love and care about Tobago and Tobagonians, we will not allow narrow partisan political interests and selfish personal agendas to trump the interests of Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer.
Members, the Chief Secretary is still making his presentation. You are guided by Standing Order 44. Continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. As a preacher of the gospel, I know that sometimes when you preach, when you can't say amen, just say ouch. And that's to the minority. Madam Presiding Officer, the vision and commitment of my administration is to make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet. As difficult as it may seem, I am confident that if we work together and work in unison, putting our hands to the plow as one Tobago, as aptly depicted on the cover of the page of this budget statement, the vision can be achieved. What is required is for us to coalesce around the values, principles, and qualities that define and distinguishes us as Tobagonians. This will allow us to harvest our inner strength as a people, to successfully overcome the challenges we are confronted with, to grasp the opportunities that will come as we will develop, and it will prevent us from selling out to a political party in Trinidad. Madam Presiding Officer, this year the budget is deliberately themed building a sustainable, prosperous, and resilient Tobago. This theme was chosen because of the critical and urgent need to reset, refocus, and reinvigorate the island's development efforts. In proceeding this way, we must immediately deprojectize our approach to development and focus instead on building the institutional ecosystem and governance framework that will deliver sustainability, prosperity, and resilience. This approach to development is based on the simple but profound fact that development is driven by the quality of our governing institutions. My fellow Tobagonians, Tobagonians living abroad, Tobagonians by blood, Tobagonians by residency, Tobagonians by love, let us focus on strengthening our institutions of governance and lay the foundation on which we will build a sustainable, prosperous, and a resilient Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, with that said, let me thank the members of this House and the listening public for journeying with me today. I hope that the essence of this presentation will ignite our passion, power our collective efforts, and catalyze the development of our beloved island. And with this, be it resolved that this House approve the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure respecting all functions of the Tobago House of Assembly for the financial year October 1, 2023 to September 30th, 2024, copies of which will be laid on the table at a later stage of the proceedings.